from pretty much as long as any of us can remember, like literally from the dawn of time, menstruation has been weaponized against women.
And she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. And, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
And we're basically treated like werewolves. Like once a month, something terrible happens to us and we can't control ourselves and all hell breaks loose. The thing is, menstruation, and not just menstruation as in getting a period, but the entire menstrual cycle is literally a superpower. But unfortunately, a lot of us have been brainwashed to believe that it's the complete opposite, that it's some kind of handicap, because this genetic mutation known as men have weaponized the menstrual cycle and menstruation against women. So in this episode, I'm going to break down every single week of our menstrual cycle. And by the end of this episode, you're not only going to be able to better understand yourself and your body, but you're going to be able to sync your career, your projects, your athletic training, your social life, your love life, and so many other elements of your life to your menstrual cycle. And you're going to have so many light bulb moments during this episode where, I'm not even kidding, a light bulb is going to go off in your head and you're going to be like, oh, this thing that happens to me every month that I couldn't explain suddenly makes a lot of sense. And you're also going to be surprised at how big a role our menstrual cycle plays in a lot of the things that you didn't even realize were impacted by our menstrual cycle. All right, with that, DJ, hit the theme song. We got to get the show on the road. Hello to all the new and returning baddies. I am Nikki, your host. I am the baddest bitch in the building, not to be confused with you, who is also the baddest bitch in the building. And if I had to explain this podcast in one sentence, I would say, first of all, this was one of the most shared and fastest growing podcasts on Spotify in 2025. Put some respect on my motherfucking name. But also, this podcast is about how we can unlearn the ways that the patriarchy has groomed and brainwashed us. This podcast is about how we can unlearn the ways that the patriarchy has groomed and brainwashed us to leak our power. And it's also a feminine twist on the 48 laws of power, as you've probably guessed with my girly law of power episodes. Today's episode is so important because we have been so horrendously brainwashed to be not only ashamed of our menstrual cycles, but also ignorant of them. There's so much information that women don't know about what is happening to our bodies every single week, every single day even. So I'm so excited to get into this episode. And as you know, oh my God, my voice cracked. I'm so sorry. As you know, actually, I'm not that sorry. I couldn't control it. As you know, my non-girly law of power episodes are always voted on by you baddies on my Instagram story. This episode in particular, I just put a story up on Instagram a few months ago, and it was literally just a video of me deadlifting. And I'm like, hey baddies, do you want to hear an episode about understanding your menstrual cycle and how you can sync your life to it? And the amount of messages I got after that story, baddies, when I tell you, it took me like 2-3 days to get through all those DMs and answer all of you, because I answer all my DMs, but it took me so long because so many of you were like, yes, please, we want this. So that's what we're going to get into. And the caveat that I have to give is that I am not a medical professional. I am a philosopher, not a doctor or a OB-GYN. And my goal with this episode is to give you a starting point. It's to give you information and to help you understand what's happening in your body and how you can be a better advocate for yourself during different points of your cycle. And if you're ever sitting in the doctor's office and you need help with something hormonally related. So this is a starting point, and this is not any sort of medical advice. All right. And as always, when I'm discussing scientific things, I'm going to put all my sources in the show notes. And I'm also going to put timestamps because I'm sure a lot of you are going to come back and listen to this sometime in the future, or if you're in a particular phase of your cycle. So all the timestamps and all the sources will be in the show notes. All right, let's get into it. What I'm going to tell you is based on a 28-day cycle, which is the average, not to be confused with the normal. Normal can be shorter or longer, but I'm going to go with the average. And I highly, highly, highly encourage you to track your cycle. And there's a million apps out there. You can even do it the old-fashioned way with pen and paper and a notebook, whatever works for you. Track your cycle and use this information alongside the data you're gathering on your own menstrual cycle, because your mind is going to be blown. Okay. I'm going to be talking about 3 hormones throughout this episode. So, number 1, of course, is estrogen. And in a nutshell, estrogen helps to build the uterine lining and also boosts our mood and energy. It is not a female hormone, okay? It is not just present in females, and it is not a hormone that makes you physically weak, as we're going to discuss, because I'm going to be dispelling a lot of myths throughout this episode. The next hormone is progesterone. And fun fact, progestation. This is your progestation hormone because it helps you carry out a pregnancy. And it's the hormone that peaks right after we ovulate. And progesterone helps keep estrogen in check. And it also has this calming effect on us, as we're going to discuss. And the third hormone is testosterone, not a male hormone. Again, this is not exclusively present in males. Women have testosterone as well. And this is the hormone that supports sex drive, confidence, and physical strength, as we're going to see. Because you might be thinking, confidence? Yes, we're going to discuss that. Not to be confused with audacity, which is what men are socialized to have. Okay? The other thing that we need to understand are the 2 main phases of our menstrual cycle. The first half of our cycle is called the follicular phase, and that is, as the name implies, when that follicle is maturing, becoming an egg, and getting released by our ovaries. The second half of our cycle is called the luteal phase. The follicular phase is estrogen dominant. The luteal phase is progesterone dominant. And testosterone is relatively stable throughout our cycle, but it peaks a little bit around ovulation. Now, a fun fact here is women go through a 28-day cycle, plus or minus a few days, whereas men have a 24-hour cycle of just testosterone. So it tends to peak in the morning and then stabilize throughout the day. So they just wake up with a boner and then they're good to go. All right, with all that information, now we're able to get into the 4 phases of our cycle. And what you're going to notice, because woman is God, like I mentioned in my episode on religion, woman is God and we hold the key to creation. Our bodies mirror nature. As one of you baddies put it so succinctly and so eloquently in a DM you sent me, our bodies mirror nature. And our cycle, the 4 weeks of our cycle, mirror the 4 seasons. Now, I got goosebumps. Because this podcast is a work of art, we are going to play Vivaldi's 4 seasons as we get into each season of our cycle. Can you baddies tell I like my historical Italian men? Machiavelli, Vivaldi. Oh, all right, DJ, cue up Antonio Vivaldi. Play Winter. Winter. Allegro non molto. I want that one. Beautiful. Pizza, pasta, lasagna. Our cycle starts during menstruation. And you might be feeling depleted, in pain, moody. Well, welcome to winter. That is the start of our cycle. And as much as you might hate it, it is a very important part of our cycle. In fact, winter, menstruation, sets the tone for the rest of our cycle. So our period is our anchor, and it's one of the most important indicators of our health. And I'm grateful for my period, even if I choose to be child-free and I don't choose to use my reproductive system to produce a child. I'm still so grateful for my menstrual cycle and my period, and understanding it has given me so much pride and understanding, like so much clarity. So for each season of our cycle, I'm going to discuss the hormones that are dominant in that cycle and what that means for us, our mood, energy levels, productivity, sociability, physical performance, and I'll wrap it up with what our body is trying to do and what this part of our cycle is the best time for. So I'm going to go through that format for every single phase. Hormones first. In the thumbnail of this episode, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, I've included a graph with our hormonal fluctuations so that you can visualize what I'm speaking about. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be up on your screen. So during menstruation, this is when estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are all at their lowest points. And towards the end of winter, that's when our estrogen starts to increase again. And a myth I need to dispel right off the bat is I've seen a lot of TikToks and reels about how when we're on our periods, our testosterone is at its peak. And if we're moody, we're acting like men. I get how fun, like those are funny. I like those, but they're completely wrong. All our hormones, those three hormones, are at their lowest at the time of menstruation, especially the first few days. So those reels are a load of baloney. Now, if you tend to get migraines or headaches around the time of your period, or if you get them and you don't really know if they're linked to your period, track your menstrual cycle because research has shown that there is a connection between migraines and the start of your period because your estrogen drops in the first 2 to 3 days. And there's also research showing a link between magnesium deficiency and migraines, even in women who are menopausal and postmenopausal. And if you get migraines towards the end of your period, that's called end menstruation migraines, that could be caused by blood loss and low iron. Again, disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional and this is not medical advice, but it's something to consider. And I encourage you to do your own research about this if you suffer from migraines, because it could be linked to your period and to certain deficiencies like magnesium or iron. Now, our period is a time of physical and emotional release. It tends to be when our bloating and our breast tenderness start to go away. And this will make more sense when I discuss autumn, but it's a time of release. In terms of our mood, this is when we are more inwards. Our energy is more inwards and we tend to feel more calm and reflective. And I want to share a quote from the book Period Power, which is one of my main sources for this episode. And this describes menstruation so well. Menstruation is when the outer lights of the world turn down and our inner lights go up. And for our inner lights to be their most bright, they require darkness. So for a lot of us, menstruation can be a time of high intuition and inward personal reflection. For others, it could be a time when you're really irritable and you have low mood and things tend to set you off really easily. I tend to be like this too. And also, you can be both of these things at the same time. You can be both of these things at different points of menstruation. They're not mutually exclusive. In terms of energy levels, our energy tends to be low, especially during the first 3 to 5 days. And those are the days when it's really important to slow down and to rest. And resting adequately during winter will pay dividends in spring and summer. You might need an extra hour or two of sleep during menstruation. I know this is the case for me because don't forget, your body is literally shedding the lining of an organ. So if you find that you sleep 8 hours and you still feel groggy, it might be because you need 9 or 10. I tend to need 9 hours of sleep throughout my cycle minimum, but on my period, it's closer to 9.5 or 10 hours. And if I'm cutting weight and prepping for a competition, oh my God, I need like 10, minimum 10. So make sure to prioritize your rest. I know it's hard. I know a lot of us are busy and everything is so go, 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 but the way we're living is not normal. We're not meant to be go, go, go all the time. We're not meant to be hustling and grinding all the time. So winter is a time to slow down. Remember that nothing blooms all year round. And when you rest during your winter, you're getting the soil ready for what's going to come in spring and summer. I know for some of us, it can be really, really hard, but let's make sure we don't get into the victimella mindset of, oh, I can't do anything for myself, and if I stop, the world is going to explode. You have one body in this lifetime. Take care of her. On that note, productivity. Your productivity during winter could be low, especially depending on your energy levels and your mood. And you might be slower during this part of your cycle. So be gentle with yourself, be forgiving. Don't load up your calendar with 2 billion things because chances are you're not going to get through all of them. And winter is not really a time to start something new. If you've been stuck on a project or you've been stuck on something all month long and you get to your period, this might be the time to step away from it if it's possible and see if your intuition tells you something, because your intuition tends to be very high during your period. Because remember, outside lights are dimmed, inside lights are at their brightest. In terms of sociability, your sociability and your social battery might be pretty low at this point. Again, this could be tied to your mood as well. But a lot of us prefer solitude during our periods, especially if you're irritable. You might also be very horny during your period. And I want to stress the power of the female orgasm because some of y'all are sleeping on the power of the female orgasm. I could make a 10-part series on the female orgasm, and each episode would last like 900 years. All I'm going to say is number one, when you orgasm, it releases endorphins, and those are natural painkillers. So it could help you with the pain you might be experiencing from your cramps or other pain that you have during your period. And second, the female orgasm is not the female equivalent of a male orgasm where men just release and ejaculate. It's not like that. Women orgasm to help them stimulate birth and labor. And it actually, I did some research on it. A lot of women said that it's helped speed up their labor. So do not sleep on the power of your orgasm. I know during our periods, a lot of us are like, I don't even want to see a person, let alone have them go down there. But don't forget, you can just fuck yourself. Okay? So if someone says, hey, go fuck yourself, you should be like, oh, thank you for the suggestion. Thank you for reminding me. But don't just try it. Just try, bust a nut. Bust a nut one time and then thank me later. Okay? And just don't think of me when you're doing it. Okay? All right. Physical performance. On that note, physical performance. I included this because as an athlete, I started tracking my period a few years ago to sync it with my powerlifting training. Oh my God. When I tell you, like the amount of things that made sense and fell into place after I started tracking my period. If you are an athlete, a strength athlete, an endurance athlete, whatever you do, if you do a sport, even if you go to the gym recreationally just to stay fit, track your cycle. The week to week difference in your physical capabilities is insane. What I'm going to tell you here is general information, but the way that you are going to understand what works for you is by tracking your own cycle. So our physical performance tends to be not that great during our period because, again, your body is shedding the lining of an organ. So, of course, we've got other priorities. But exercise, especially aerobic exercise, cardio, can help with your cramps and your mood because you release endorphins when you exercise. So don't sleep on the power of exercise. Bust a nut and exercise. All right, that's all I'm going to say. But of course, listen to your body. If your body is like, do not even move, I will kill you, then you might want to stay put. But for me, I find that on the heaviest day of my period, that's when I have bad cramps and knee pain. I get the weirdest knee pain in both of my knees on that day. And it's like a knee pain that starts from my soul. I can't even describe it. It's so weird. But on that day, I try to avoid training. If I have to train on that day, I either move it or I pop an Advil and I keep it really, really light. And I tell my coach, I'm like, this day I could not push it. Unfortunately, I had to compete on the heaviest day of my period at the provincial championships back in October of 2025. And I remember in my episodes leading up to that, I was so excited. I was giving you all updates. And then I kind of went quiet after. And that's because I was So I was projected to come first. I was projected to win and be the provincial champ. But because I was on the heaviest day of my period, my performance was just not that great. For context, you do 9 attempts, 3 attempts at squat, 3 attempts at bench press, 3 attempts at deadlift. And the heaviest attempt from each lift is the one that counts towards your total. And the person with the highest total wins. Oh my God, my third squat. I failed my third squat, which was, I think, at 140 kilos or 142, something like that, which is a weight I've been able to hit for years. That was the first time in competition I've ever failed a squat on strength. It sucked. But I still had my first place placing. But going into deadlifts, because the order is squat, bench, and deadlifts, going into deadlifts, I had to hit all 3 of my attempts, and I had to hit a certain weight on my last attempt so that I could keep my placing. And I failed my third deadlift and lost my placing at first, and I ended up coming in second, which is pretty good, but I was literally training to be the provincial champ, so it sucked. All that to say, sorry, side note, one of you is going to care, but that was a side note just to say that if you are an athlete, please track your cycle. Please. Okay? What your body is trying to do during winter is to reset, not only in terms of shedding the old uterine lining, but also shedding other things that might not serve you in your life anymore. And it's the best time for reflection. Because your intuition is high and your energy tends to be inward, it's a really good time to reflect on things that you may have been putting off or a gut feeling that you've been ignoring. Now is the time to revisit that. And it's a good time to plan for the month ahead on the things that you're going to take action on in spring and summer. And please remember that you're powerful as fuck. A lot of us, we go on completely normally during our periods. We go to work, we go to the gym, we do all of our responsibilities. If you have kids, if you have people that you have to take care of, we're doing all of these things, and nobody would know around us that we're on our periods unless we told them. So you're extremely powerful, and remember that menstruating is not a disease. Just because your energy, your mood, your physical performance might be low during this point, it doesn't mean anything other than a natural part of your cycle. Because remember, nothing blooms all year round. As winter is ending and you feel like you are coming out of your cocoon, you're coming out of your shell, you can now breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, the world is bright again and you're ready to take on the world. And that brings you to the start of your spring. So spring is the second half of your follicular phase. Remember, your menstrual cycle has 2 phases, the follicular and the luteal. The menstruation was the first part of the follicular. Now we are in the second part of the follicular. So the hormones that are running the show here is estrogen. Your estrogen is significantly increasing, and it's going to peak at the end of spring when ovulation happens. And your progesterone is still low at this point. It's around the same levels as it was during menstruation. And your testosterone is also slightly increasing as well. And that's going to peak around ovulation, just like your estrogen. So something I have to talk about is the relationship between estrogen and the gut microbiome. That's a bidirectional relationship because the microbiome affects estrogen and vice versa. I'm going to discuss that and PMDD at the end of this episode. So stay tuned for that. What we're going to discuss right now is mood. In the spring, our mood is improving. We're getting in an increasingly better mood. And whereas menstruation was very inward facing, now we are more outward facing. We're more motivated, curious, we're feeling good, and we might be more energetic, which leads me to the next part, which is energy levels. So your energy levels should be increasing at this point, and you've come out of the hibernation of winter, especially if you had a very tough and painful period. Spring might feel like a breath of fresh air. You're feeling better at this point because of the rise in estrogen. I should say here, another myth is the villainization of estrogen, because estrogen gets such a bad rap. People think that estrogen is just the opposite of testosterone. It's not. Estrogen is your body hormone. Okay? Do not treat it, do not think of it as the opposite of testosterone. It is its own hormone, all right? Put some respect on our motherfucking name. And there's so many issues that we tend to have in our lives because of low estrogen. Okay? So don't think of estrogen as the opposite of testosterone or as the hormone that makes us weak. That's just a load of crap. So if your energy levels and your mood are improving during spring, you have estrogen to thank for that. Now, productivity. You might be feeling more motivated in spring. Your motivation might be high and you're like curious, you're ready to go out and get things done. But don't go 100% just yet. I'm going to share a quote from the book Period Power. Spring is nature's birthing season. So take some time to reflect on what is emerging in you. I love that quote because it is literally nature's birthing season. That's when those little shoots start coming out of the ground, but they're not fully grown yet. And they could still be vulnerable. So if you have some new ideas, you have some thoughts on a project that you want to take on or something new, let those ideas marinate before you act on them in your summer. During spring, you might also find that it's a little bit difficult to focus. You might be kind of scatterbrained. And I tend to be like this in spring too. It's really hard for me to focus on one thing and even to fall asleep because my brain will not turn off. So if you find that there's a point in the month where your focus is all over the place, it might be because you're in spring. Now, sociability. We tend to be social butterflies in the spring, and that's again because of estrogen. So if you're planning on having a social event, a party, or whatever event where you have to socialize a lot, see if you can book it during your spring or your summer. In terms of physical performance, you are pretty strong during spring. For me, I find that this is when I tend to be my strongest. If you're trying to go for new PRs or if you have to compete, like this is likely one of the best times, spring or summer. Again, you need to track your cycle to be able to understand when it is in your cycle that you are at your strongest. So athletes, I'm talking to you, track your cycle. Now, something really interesting I found is that during spring, we tend to have a higher pain tolerance and a higher tolerance for endurance because our oxygen uptake is better and so we recover faster. So again, this is a good time for physical activity and for pushing yourself. What your body is trying to do during the spring is to get back in action and to move things forward. But like I said, with certain things like ideas, projects, things that are starting to take form, don't go 100% yet. Don't go like right out the gate telling everybody about it. Let them marinate and act on them in the summer. And of course, if this is possible, because I know that at work, a lot of the times the deadlines are determined by somebody other than you. So it could be out of your control. But where you could have some control, it would be a good idea to let things marinate during this period of time. And your spring is the best time to try new things, to build new habits, to go out and do something that you might not otherwise have done because it's new, it might be daunting, or you've been putting off a habit or something. This is the time to do new things. Okay, so with the increase in energy and mood and curiosity that spring brings, it's all culminating in a crescendo because it is time for summer. And you're about to be on top of the world. Summer. For me, this is one of my favorite points in my cycle. Summer straddles two phases. It starts in the follicular phase and then it moves into the luteal phase. And the beginning of summer is marked by ovulation. Hormonally, summer is when your estrogen and your testosterone peak at ovulation. And then after that, your progesterone rises and peaks towards the end of summer. You might know when you ovulate because you might be super horny. For me, I know when I ovulate because I'm in pain. It hurts me. And I get pain in my lower abdomen on the left or right side, depending on which ovary is releasing the egg. So when I start feeling that pain come up, I take an Advil and I do not suffer because I don't want to be in that pain, because I can't sit, I can't move, I can't cough, I can't exist. It is so painful. And if you get booty hole cramps like I do, it is because of that fluctuation in hormones, which causes the booty hole, the intestines to spasm. If you are fortunate enough not to get ovulation pain, you might also know that you're ovulating because your mood tends to improve in the summer. On that note, let's talk about mood. So, in the summer, you tend to have a good mood. Your mood is increasing throughout the spring and it's getting better and better as you get into summer. And you might feel like you're on top of the world. You might feel super motivated. You might feel great. If you have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, your summer might be very brief. And I'm going to talk about PMDD at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. But generally, our mood tends to be good, especially pre-ovulation, because that's when estrogen is getting to its peak. And then post-ovulation, that's when estrogen decreases and progesterone increases. And that increase in progesterone could stimulate your appetite and also cause your blood sugar levels to fluctuate. So if you get mood swings and hangriness in the second part of your summer, especially after you ovulate, that could be why. It could be because of the progesterone that's increasing. So it might be a good idea to meal prep or at least have your grocery shopping done before you get to your post ovulation phase. In terms of energy levels, your energy tends to be high during the summer as well. And this is the most outward facing point of your cycle because your body is literally trying to get you pregnant. And what's interesting is that around pre ovulation, you tend to need less sleep. You also might have a little bit more difficulty falling and staying asleep pre ovulation. Again, this is something I experienced. So if you find that there's a few days in the month where you have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, it's probably the few days right before ovulation. After you ovulate, that's when your progesterone increases. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, progesterone has a calming effect. So after you ovulate, it's easier to fall and stay asleep. Now, as we all know, ovulation time is when our horniness levels get pretty high. And what's really interesting is that we give off pheromones when we're ovulating. There was a study that found that the odor women give off during ovulation increases testosterone and decreases cortisol in men, which is so these guys are literally foaming at the mouth. And there was another study that showed that lap dancers tend to get the most tips when they're ovulating and when they're on their periods. And women who took hormonal birth control tend to make less throughout the month than their counterparts who didn't take any birth control. So if there's any time to manipulate a man and get what you want, it is when you're ovulating. But on the other hand, this might also be a time when you get a lot of unwanted attention from men, and this could also be very uncomfortable. So it could go both ways. But if you've ever been outside and you felt like everyone was staring at you and all the guys kept turning their heads to look at you and you're like, is there something on my face? It literally could be because you're ovulating and you're giving off pheromones. Really interesting. Do with that information what you will. Now, productivity. Your productivity during summer tends to be high. And now is the time to work on the ideas and those things that were taking shape, taking root in the spring. So that's why I said don't go 100% in your spring. Let those things marinate and act on them in the summer. Obviously, if possible, I know that a lot of us are working on timelines and deadlines that are dictated by other people. So wherever possible, we can sync with our cycle. And if not, at least we understand. Sociability. Okay, your sociability is high during summer. Again, because your body wants to get you pregnant, you are a social butterfly. You also have higher self-esteem and confidence around this time. Summer is actually an ideal time to receive constructive feedback. So if you have a performance review, for example, if you're able to schedule that during your summer, that will be night and day difference than scheduling it during your autumn, which I'm going to discuss in the next part. You also tend to be very flirty because obviously your body wants to get you to sit on the deek. And with that higher confidence, you're more likely to put yourself out there in the world. Some of the sources I consulted said that This is a great time to go on dates, but I would say the opposite. Because you tend to have rose colored glasses on during your summer, and because your body is literally trying to get you to find a mate and possibly overlook some of their flaws, I would say that this might not be the best time to go on a date because you're more likely to be a little bit goo goo gaga, a little bit stupid. But then again, if you go on a date, for example, in autumn, you're more likely to get the ick from the guy. So obviously, you know yourself best. If you find that you make really bad dating related decisions from time to time, it could be because you're in your summer and you just have those rose colored glasses on. On the topic of sociability, another very interesting thing I found is that you tend to be more articulate in the days leading up to ovulation. You also tend to be more confident and your face looks more symmetrical, your skin clears up. So if you need to get a picture taken, it's good to do it a few days before ovulation. In terms of physical performance, again, you need to track your cycle to understand what this means for you. But physical performance tends to be high during the summer as well. And it might peak right before ovulation. And that's usually around the time when your testosterone peaks. That's when I tend to be the strongest. Like I said, I am literally unstoppable right before I ovulate. It's crazy how different my strength is pre ovulation versus in my autumn, for example. But again, like a broken record, female athletes need to track their menstrual cycles, okay? Another thing that's interesting, and I've said this a million times because everything is interesting, is that you are more likely to be constipated after ovulation. And that's because progesterone tends to slow down a process that's happening in your gut called peristalsis. And that's essentially this wave like movement that keeps everything moving along. So if you find that you tend to be more constipated at a point in the month, it could be after ovulation when your progesterone is increasing. Now, what your body is trying to do in this phase is push you out into the world. But be careful not to overcommit. You might be feeling really good and bubbly and motivated in the summer, but remember that your next phase is autumn. And if you're saying yes to a lot of things and they fall during your autumn, that might put unnecessary pressure for you during a time when you're becoming more inward facing. So keep that in mind. However, summer is the best time for being social, taking risks, giving presentations. If you have to do public speaking, now is the best time to do it, especially a few days before ovulation when you're most articulate. It's also a great time to do negotiations. For example, if you want to get a pay raise, try to schedule it during your summer, again, pre ovulation. And it's also a good time to get feedback, like a performance review. So, summer is so great. For a lot of us, it's when we feel like we're at our best and we're literally being pushed out into the world and we feel good about it. But unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. And that's when autumn begins. Autumn is the second half of your luteal phase, and it can be hell if you have unprocessed emotions or trauma. And you're going to understand what I mean in a few minutes. Hormonally, your progesterone starts off really high at the beginning of autumn, and then it decreases. You'll also have a small spike in estrogen at the start of autumn, and then it starts to decrease. And your testosterone is pretty stable throughout autumn. In terms of mood, this is likely when a lot of us are experiencing a decline in our mood. And that's likely because the decreasing estrogen causes a decrease in serotonin, which is responsible for mood and appetite, among a bunch of other functions. So you might notice a decrease in your mood and an increase in your appetite. Rising progesterone levels also cause a decrease in insulin sensitivity. So you're more susceptible to insulin and blood sugar imbalances during your autumn. So it's really, really, really important that you eat well and you eat regularly. And another interesting fact is that the symptoms of PMS and the symptoms of low blood sugar are very similar. And it's really important to take care of the basics like eating regularly. Please do not skip breakfast. You're not going to be skinnier or more snatched when you skip meals and you skip breakfast. or cut out carbs, what you're actually doing, especially when you skip meals, is you're messing with your metabolism, and you're going to be more likely to cause big spikes in your blood sugar when you eat some whack meal that probably has a bunch of simple carbs in it. So please do not skip your meals. And I'm going to talk more about this at the end of this episode when I discuss PMDD, and any of the girlies who are listening who struggle with PMS. This might be helpful for you too. So stay tuned for that. Now, going back to mood, you might notice that there's a time in the month where you feel really anxious, sad, depressed, irritable, defensive, or very critical of yourself. And that is because you're probably in autumn, because these are all things that tend to happen to us during our autumn. I'm going to read another quote from the book Period Power, which encompasses autumn so eloquently. The rose-tinted glasses of summer are replaced with X-ray specs, granting you the power to see through things with laser-like clarity, which, in addition to a lowered tolerance for putting up with bullshit, can either feel altogether freeing or dangerous. So those rose-colored glasses are off, the X-ray glasses are on, and this could be a really tough time for a lot of us. I struggle a lot in autumn. Oh my God. I get into slumps. It's every other month for me. Every other autumn is so bad. I get into such a bad slump. I can't do anything. I can't write episodes. I can't record. I can't even motivate myself to do anything. And it's gotten worse since I quit my job and started working on being a full-time podcaster and author and philosopher. It's just, it's a really, really tough time. So if you struggle in autumn, I feel you so deeply. I really do. Now, in terms of energy levels, energy tends to be low to moderate, and you might find that your energy is decreasing throughout your autumn. So it's really, really important to get good sleep. And like I said, falling and staying asleep could be easier after you ovulate because of the increase in progesterone, but you might experience some difficulty with falling and staying asleep as you get closer to menstruation because, again, the progesterone decreases. So try to prioritize your sleep at the beginning of your autumn as much as you can. Now, similar to menstruation in the winter, your energy during autumn is turned inwards, and you might find yourself withdrawing more and even having a low or non-existent sex drive. So if you have a time in the month where you are like, don't touch me, don't look at me, if I see a man, I will throw up, it is during autumn. I'm describing myself. In terms of sociability could be low, especially because your energy is turning more inwards. And because estrogen is low, and like I said, estrogen is your body hormone, and it actually helps you with social interactions and social cohesion. So when your estrogen is low, you're more likely to be less sociable. Or I should phrase it better. You're less likely to be sociable. That's what I'm trying to say. You might also find that you're very harsh. You might have no filter. You might be more sensitive to noise and smells. I'm definitely like this. And you might have less tolerance for your partner during this time. Your body might actually be annoyed that they didn't impregnate you. Autumn is truly a time to focus on yourself. Autumn and winter are times when you are inward, like I said a billion times, and it's time to prioritize yourself. A lot of us like solitude during the autumn and during winter, so make sure that you understand what you need and you communicate that to the people around you. Because remember, while you understand what's going on, your partner or your close friend or your roommate might not understand that. They probably don't. They don't know what's happening. So tell them. Tell them what you need. Tell them what you're going through. And chances are, if they care about you, they're going to be receptive to it and they're going to want to support you. Now, an interesting quote. I'm going to quote another line from Period Power. And this is probably my favorite one that I've shared throughout this episode because, you're going to see why. Society favors who we are in spring and summer. Fertile young women who are nice and kind and polite, not to mention up for it. I'm assuming this means wanting to engage in sexy time. The author is British, so some of these terms that she uses, I'm like, what do these mean? Maybe it's easier if I read this with a British accent. Autumn is where we grow up and get real. It's where you move into the mature half of your cycle. Anyone who's British and listening to this probably This probably sounded like fingernails on a chalkboard. I am so sorry. I didn't do any nonsense when I was reading the passages, so I had to compensate for that somehow. But what do we get from this quote? When we are in our inward facing parts of our cycle, the world doesn't really validate that because we're not people pleasers, we're not sociable, we're not agreeable. So be gentle with yourself and remember that understanding where you're at in your cycle is a very important part of self-care. A lot of the time we think of self-care as using these under eye patches and doing like a 12-step skincare and grooming routine. And listen, that could help. You know, I'm not knocking it. If that helps you and makes you feel better, great. But true self-care is understanding what your body is going through and what it needs from you and how you can be an advocate for yourself. Okay? So if you find that autumn is a really tough time for you, understand what you need and don't be ashamed or shy away from articulating that to the people around you. I'm rooting for you because I have a really tough time in autumn. I really do. So I feel you. All right, in terms of physical performance, it's probably low at this point. Again, I'm going to say it again. You know what I'm going to say. Ladies, if you're doing a sport, if you even step foot in a gym, track your cycle. And speaking of physical performance, it could take you longer to orgasm in autumn because your estrogen and testosterone are low. What your body is trying to do in autumn is slow down and get ready for menstruation or pregnancy. And autumn is the best time for making decisions because your intuition tends to be very high during autumn. It's also a good time to tidy up and get organized. And this could be literally organizing your home or organizing your calendar because progesterone is high in autumn and it creates that nesting feeling that pregnant women have. That helps with organizing things. So this is a great time to declutter, to organize, to get things sorted, and to get rid of things, material or emotional, and tying loose ends. So baddies, those were the 4 weeks of our cycles, the 4 seasons that we go through. Our bodies are so amazing. Just writing this episode, I was in awe of what our bodies are capable of doing. And this is just scratching the surface. This is like the tip of the iceberg. So, as I promised, let's now talk about PMDD and our gut health because these are really important things that we need to discuss and they're not talked about enough. So we're going to talk about them. A lot of us tend to sleep on the importance of our gut health. And there is a relationship, like I mentioned earlier, there's a bidirectional relationship between estrogen and our gut microbiome. It's a bisexual relationship, so estrogen affects our gut microbiome and our gut microbiome affects our estrogen. And there's a collection of bacteria in our gut called estrobolome, which are bacteria that are capable of metabolizing estrogens. And they regulate the reactivation and the recirculation of estrogen in our body. So if your gut microbiome is out of whack, your body might be reabsorbing estrogen that was meant to be excreted via fecal matter, and it gets recirculated in your bloodstream and can lead to estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance can lead to conditions like endometriosis, migraines, heavy periods, fibroids, cysts, PMS, mood swings, depression, weight gain, especially around your midsection, bloating, brain fog, abnormal pap results, and many other things. If any of these symptoms sound familiar to you, it's worth it to understand what's going on in your gut microbiome and asking yourself if you're doing everything you can to ensure that you have a healthy gut microbiome. Because estrogen dominance can be caused by a poor diet, PCOS, alcohol consumption, obesity, because fat cells produce excess estrogen, high levels of cortisol, so if you're stressed all the time, and anovulatory cycles, which are cycles where you don't ovulate. And this is common in teenagers and also in perimenopausal women. So, again, caveat, I am not a medical professional, but based on the research that I did, there is a very big connection between a healthy gut and healthy amounts of estrogen. So, a few things that you can do right off the bat to balance your gut microbiome and hopefully address any estrogen dominance that you might have is to increase your water intake, increase your fiber intake. Being regular is very important because your body gets rid of excess estrogen when you shite it out. So it's very important to be regular. Okay. Sleep, good sleep, as we all know, and eating well and eating regularly. I know a lot of baddies like to skip breakfast. I get it if you're busy, if you don't have an appetite in the morning. I know like it's not ideal, but please, I'm begging you. I never beg for anything on this podcast, but I'm begging you. Don't skip breakfast. Coffee doesn't count as breakfast. Millennials, I'm talking to you. I know millennials love to make jokes about coffee, but please, coffee is not a breakfast. You can have your coffee after breakfast, but the coffee is not the breakfast. Okay? Your breakfast should have protein and complex carbs. Other things you can do is reduce your alcohol intake, exercise, especially exercise that makes you sweat because sweating removes excess estrogen. And if you need to lose weight, this is your sign to do it because, like I said, fat cells produce excess estrogen. Okay. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional. Like I said, consult your healthcare professional and do your own research. But these are some of the main things that are within your control to do. And they're probably going to help you with other elements of your life too, because fixing your diet and your exercise is going to help you just feel better overall. And for you baddies who have PMDD, the hormone changes that happen in autumn can cause a serotonin deficiency. Like I said, the decrease in estrogen causes a decrease in serotonin. And the interesting thing here is that about 90 to 95% of serotonin is produced in your gut, not your brain. So, everything I just said about eating well and keeping your blood sugar levels balanced as well, those can go a really long way in helping to improve mood. So I'll recap: having good, nourishing meals, not skipping breakfast, having protein, complex carbs, eating fewer simple carbs, like refined sugar, and reducing your alcohol intake. Also, having foods that are rich in pro and prebiotics, and also exercising. Listen, you might be thinking, these are so basic. These are so basic. But sometimes we need to go back to the basics and understand really what it is that we're lacking in the most basic levels, because we tend to overlook that and we think that there's something bigger and more serious happening, which can definitely be the case. But a lot of the time, it's good to just take inventory of whether we're doing the essentials. And I'll give you a really silly example. I have been struggling with really bad sinus congestion for the last 5 to 6 months. I don't know exactly when it started, but the last few months I've had really bad sinus congestion to the point where I cannot go anywhere without a bunch of tissues around me. I need a tissue box on my desk. I need tissues in my pockets if I'm leaving my desk. I am more congested day to day than when I'm sick with a severe cold. Like that's how congested I would be. And I've had a few issues like this in the past. So I've been using my nasal sprays that my doctor prescribed to me. They didn't work. I thought maybe I'm allergic to my cats or allergic to something. I took antihistamines, didn't work. And one day, a few weeks ago, I was telling my cousin about this. And she's like, "Do you have a humidifier in your room?" I'm like, "Humidifier? Come on. How's that going to help me?" I didn't say this out loud, but I'm like, how's a silly humidifier going to help me? I have a sinus problem. But I'm like, you know what? I might as well try it. I already have a humidifier. So I set it up in my room. Buddies, when I tell you, 2 days later, my congestion was gone. I'm not even exaggerating. My sinuses were going haywire because the air in my room was so freaking dry. Because I live in Toronto, I'm in Canada, and the winter right now is really bad. The air is super dry. And that very basic thing helped solve my issue completely. All that to say, I know this was a silly example, and obviously I'm not comparing sinus congestion to having really bad PMS or PMDD. I just want to give an example of how checking off all the basics sometimes can really help us. And chances are a lot of us, because our lives are so go, 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 and we are not prioritizing our health, our diet, our sleep. And sometimes it's really hard to do that when our lives get so busy. But prioritizing those things is such an important act of self-care, and it can really go a long way. Another thing I discovered during my research for PMDD was that some people said that taking an iron supplement, magnesium, or a B vitamin really helped them. So it's a good idea, honestly, for anyone to get blood work done and see if you have any deficiencies, because a lot of us tend to have, especially iron deficiencies. But all of this was a starting point to get you understanding what's happening in your body, understanding what your body needs. And if you need to go to the doctor for anything, I found in my experience that I need to advocate for myself. I need to come with a concrete ask and say, hey, I'm having this issue. I want to get blood work done. I want to get a pap test done. But I can't do that without having done the prior research. And this might sound crazy, but a lot of the health issues that I've had and I've solved are purely because I went on Reddit or TikTok and I listened to other women who had the exact same issue and who shared what they did. And that has helped me so much. I'm not even kidding. I don't even want to say it's like pseudoscience or something, because to me, lived experience is empirical evidence. But again, do your research, consult your healthcare professional, and always be an advocate for yourself. All right. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I hope that this was helpful. And thank you, baddies, for pushing me to do this topic and speaking up and being advocates for yourself, because this is such an important topic that all women need to know about. All right, in the meantime, stay bad, no matter what season you're in. And don't forget that you're the baddest bitch in any building that you step foot in. Until next time, stay bad. Love you. Bye. All right, I'm going to shout out all the baddies who are supporting on Patreon. Shout out to Kate, Danny, Adriana, Mina, Gemma, Priya, Shara, Katya, Melissa, May, Naomi, Nilufar, Adelaide, Nadia, Faith, Amy, Melinda, Sophia M, Sophia K, Jada, Roselle, Amara, and Kat. Thank you all so much for your support.